Good afternoon, Frank. It's Thursday. How you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm Frank Forza. This is my good friend Noah Green. We are Everyman BJJ. We're here today. Noah, I was telling you before we went on air that one of the things today was I had a really good day, and I was on my cycle, and I had the sun, the sun on my skin. I had the wind in my face. I was feeling free, and I thought, what is it that gives us this state of mind? Like, what ingredients come together? Some days are just this really perfect day. You feel like you're on cloud nine, and then other days feels like nothing will go right. So we want to talk today about what makes a great day, paying attention to that, being mindful, being aware, so that you can control that process and maybe duplicate it more. We're also going to talk about something that's a big deal for martial artists and non-martial artists, which is the excuses we tell ourselves. We're in a time right now, Noah, where with COVID-19 and the world being flipped on its head, where a lot of people are scared, a lot of people are waiting on, a vaccine to make everything right again. And in the meantime, I would argue the best medicine is for us to adopt and employ healthy living habits starting today. Great habits of what we put in our shopping cart, our financial fitness, our mental, spiritual fitness, whatever. Now is the time. Now is the urgency. If people aren't going to do it now, they may never do it. So we want to talk about some of the excuses that block people there. And, the same excuses, Noah, that might stop somebody. They go to jiu-jitsu training for a day or a week or a month, and then they stop. And then they have this whole narrative that justifies that. And so we'll talk about that. If we have time, we'll also talk about anybody out there who's married and trains jiu-jitsu a lot, anybody out there in a serious relationship with a girlfriend or a boyfriend who trains a lot. And as you know, Noah, having been, blue belt under Renzo Gracie, I'm a black belt under Robert Drysdale. That's a very important relationship to feel supported there. A lot of people feel like they have to apologize when they go to a jiu-jitsu or a wrestling or a martial arts session. Their family might not understand it. Take you a half hour of driving both ways, hour and a half at the gym, maybe another 15, 20 minutes of post conversation. So you're looking at 2.5, 3 hours almost every time you go to that gym. And sometimes a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend can feel cheated, and that can be tricky. I remember my first jiu-jitsu instructor, Pedro Sauer, told me. I'll share that story later if we get around to it. But anyway, Noah, I'm having a really good day. It's been a very good state of mind. How are things for you there in Las Vegas?
Pretty well. I've been focusing on getting my sleep right, changing my sleep habits, and even though we're producing this right now, it's 2:11. I've been really focusing on going to bed at by midnight every day. And since I have this puppy, I've been waking up and between 4 and 7 to get him up and to get him outside. That's about the limits for him for his biological needs. And but I've been sleeping more now than ever before, 8 to 10 hours a day. And so that's brought me a lot more center or grounded feeling, and my mental capacity, my mental faculties. I feel a lot more like I can absorb more information and process it better with being rested. And that, to me, if you get your sleep right, if you get your sleep on track, that really drives. That's like the cornerstone for everything. You've got to get the sleep habits right. Now, because I have some demands on my time, I'm working up and right until the moment I fall asleep. So, I've been diminishing the amount of melatonin that I take because I have both a liquid soluble and then the tablet form that I take to help me sleep. So I've been diminishing that, and I've also been very, very mindful about my caffeine intake. So I think they say about 10 hours before you sleep. So I'm having my last caffeine during this podcast, and then after that, I'm done for the day. Then it's just water on the way out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not a coffee drinker, even though coffee, if it was straight black, minus all the pesticides, so especially if you got a good organic coffee from like Kenya or something, coffee you can have over 1,000 antioxidants that can be very healthy. I'm not a big coffee drinker as it stands. I do like green tea and matcha green teas. I usually drink a lot of non-herbal teas mostly, but I do usually drink a green tea a day. And one thing that can play a role in the caffeine, of course, is how long do you steep it, right? How long do you, whether it be the bag or whether or not you take like a little dipper there, you put put uh, the the tea in there, and you would dip it. And again, I'm kind of weakling at it because my body is so caffeine sensitive. You know me, Noah. You know I'm a high energy, high rev, high motor guy naturally. People ask me, "Have you had 5 cups of coffee?" I drink no coffee. If I drank 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day, I think I'd be way too much in any room, right? So that's number one. I'm already just high octane. Um, but to your point, with I usually fast and then I'll drink the green tea on an empty stomach. So if you're already caffeine sensitive, right? If you're a weakling, you haven't worked your way up, then if you steep that bag for say 3 minutes, you're going to get a whole lot more caffeine. So I'll usually steep it about 40, 45 seconds, maybe a minute. And I'll try to get that as early as possible because there are plenty of times where later in the day, even though I'm a big fan, I work with my jiu-jitsu clients and I'm always telling them, get to bed as early as you can. If you can get to bed at 9:30 or 10 or 11, great, fantastic. But a lot of times it's one of those things where I'm aware of that, but I defy that all the time. And part of the reason I defy that is I just have too much energy. I have to run my body in the course of a day pretty hard. It's not a matter of the digital device or anything like that. It's just my brain spins with writing and ideas and creativity and curiosity. It just revs, right? And so we have to learn to kind of, as the day goes by, Noah, what you were talking about, it would be ideal if we could have a taper, right? If we woke up, we attacked the most important things early, right? Maybe some meditation, stating our intentions, planning, making sure the day is mapped out, and then working the plan, tackling the biggest priorities earlier in the day when the brain is fresh and at its peak energy. And then it'll be better if we just sort of tapered where 8:39, 9:30. Now that's not how the real world always works, especially if you're a high performer or you've got a lot going on, you've got a family. But it's still good, Noah, like you're describing, for us to be aware of the ideal. A lot of us will fall short, but we still have to realize, where are we going? What would be the ideal? And we can work on that month by month or year by year. A lot of people, just because the ideal is not realistic, they just throw their hands up in the air instead of saying, well, that's something to shoot for. And even if I can make 50% of the ideal or 55% of the ideal or 55% of the time, that's better than nothing. That's better than just throwing my hands up in the air and saying, well, screw the ideal, right? So, I, like you, I mean, I found myself, I was wondering, like, why was today, and I've had many good days. 2020 is interesting because 2020, the world's been flipped on its head and there's so much craziness. And if you go on Facebook or you go on social media or you read the news, if you read it for too long, it's a very easy place to get depressed, right? It's just very easy to feel like the sky is falling, everything is chaotic, and we're going to have civil war, whatever. It's very easy to think negative and go into a low fear vibration. But what's interesting about that is 2020, I mean, I haven't crushed it financially in 2020. I certainly haven't. But on almost every other box, I feel really good about 2020. And I'm like, what is it? Why am I, mentally, spiritually, creatively, on a lot of levels? I'm like, wow, 2020 has been good to me. Maybe it's the solitude, maybe it's the pause, maybe the world. There's always going to be pros and cons of things, right? There are a lot of cons right now, but there's a lot of pros too. People are realizing what's important. People are not taking things for granted. People realize that life is precious and can be pulled out from under us at any point, right? So there are, people have time to decompress and declutter and take some steps back and put their life under the microscope more, right? So there's a lot of, in all of this adversity, there's a lot of opportunity. And for me, in the Chinese New Year, this is the year of the rat. Now, in the American connotation, we just think of a rat. I'm from Baltimore, I'm from the East Coast. In the East Coast, Noah, you've worked in Manhattan, you've worked on with Wall Street firms. you can go around the city and on occasion you will see rats, right? You will see rats running around a building or running out of behind a dumpster. I mean, it is not a foreign or alien concept to see a big rat. And sometimes you marvel at the size of the rat. You're like, oh my gosh, how can a rat get that big, right? There's like cat-sized rats sometimes in the West Coast, which I've seen growing up, right? And I've seen many, and sometimes I've seen a collection of rats. Well, in the Chinese New Year, the rat is sort of like the snake. Like the snake, we've sort of demonized snakes in our culture, when in reality, in a lot of cultures, especially ancient cultures, the snake was duality. The snake was yin yang. The snake was as revered for its wisdom, for sitting back and being very wise and analyzing, not just sort of the sneaky snake, the snake that will bite you. We always think of that, and historically, a lot of people have sort of honored the snake as well. Wait, the snake, be wise as a serpent, right? That old saying. And so the same way with the rat is looked at differently, say in Indian culture and in Chinese culture. So the rat is not this negative thing. And it's the year of the rat in the Chinese calendar year. So I'm thinking, man, this is my year, got to go. And 2020 in a lot of ways is almost for me relaying the foundation of my life. Like almost like, Noah, you'll relate to this. You ever feel like your life, you've got all these great pieces, and if only you could put them together, can you make the whole equal the sum of its parts? You've got all these glorious parts, you've got all these amazing parts. How do you put it together? And when we feel lost in our life, it's usually when you and I've spent a lot of time, you're a very bright guy and you've got so many talents and you're a serious guy and you do what you say and say what you're going to do. And you've got some great stuff going on academically now with your postgraduate stuff. And so you're a serious guy, you're a voracious reader, but I know that like I do, how it feels to feel like, God, I've got these gifts. I haven't learned how to use them. I haven't learned how to put the puzzle together. And it can be torturous because you can feel like, wow, I'm just scratching the surface. How do I take these pieces? I felt like that. And that's a very, for a perfectionist like me, it's a haunting almost to feel like, oh my gosh, I got these gifts, I got the goods, but how do I put them together? And I think when people feel lost, when I felt lost, when you felt lost, when everybody out there listening has felt lost, if you don't feel lost and you're listening, give it time. It will happen. It will absolutely happen. But you feel lost, and it's never a matter of, oh, I don't have the ammunition, I don't have the pieces. Everybody I've ever sat down with has something remarkable that they can do that's so high performing. Everybody has, even people in wheelchairs, everybody in every state has something that they could contribute to this world. And it's a matter of, how do I identify it? How do I bring the why, a very ferocious why, to the table and use that as fuel? And how do I put these pieces, these gifts together so that I can feel whole, I can feel home? But then the trick is not being selfish, an obligation, a mandate to say, okay, Noah, you cracked the code. You're a high performer. Guess what? Guess what will feel pretty awesome right now? Go share it. Go teach it. Go inspire somebody. Right? That's the goal. But until you put it together, you can feel like, dang, I don't know who I could inspire. Right? So anyway, I just said a lot, but I had a really good day. I had one of those days where I dialed in. And I've known you. It seems like you're having a pretty good year too. I know that there's still challenges there, but you're having a pretty good year too. You seem like I've watched you grow and develop over the 6 or 7 years we've known each other. So it seems like some really good things are happening for you. You can talk about that.
Thank you. Let's. You brought up the P word, perfectionism. Whenever this was something that was a thorn in my side, this addiction to perfectionism. I have to have. So let me give you. I can give you a perfect example. When I was training in jits, I would say, well, if I don't have enough sleep and I don't have time to get up in time to have an hour and a half from the time I go to jits to have my cup of oatmeal so I have energy to get to training, and I don't have time to consume all that because I'll feel full and I won't feel well and I won't have time. I have missed out on so much of training opportunity in my life because of perfectionism. I don't have enough sleep. I'm going to feel tired afterwards. I don't have enough time to eat beforehand. So I create all of these barriers. And you and I had an opportunity to work together at a shop, at a fintech, and there was a concept there that is really helpful, and that was my takeaway from there, and that's the concept of friction. The more you focus on these things, the more you're empowering them to become friction in your life. And what you want to do is you want to have frictionless. You want to have frictionless activities. Where let me define that a little further. With these examples of perfectionism and that falling into that habit, that mental trap of addiction, of perfectionism. It's a trap. It's a trap. Understand what is ideal. Rickson Gracie and Henzo, they never have perfect days. That's a concept. They still get to training though, because their approach is frictionless, because that's a part of them. In a couple of days, Hyla Gracie, mother of Hosier Gracie, is giving a talk on her book about the Gracie dynasty. I'm looking forward to it. I just want to plug that real quick because that's coming up. She's going to be talking about the dynasty of the Gracies, Carlson and Helio. But the approach that I saw with Hiron, I saw him as a child before he became a world champion, going in there, and you see his uncles and his cousins training him. There's no friction. It's just a part of you. And it is still a part of all of us to get out there and go to training. It is a part of us because we enjoy the sport. Once you've found it, you just have to say, okay, reconnect with your why, reconnect with your joy, find your joy in training, and focus on the joy in your training to get you through all of those self-perceived frictions, those little perfectionist snags you find. Oh, I don't have enough sleep. I don't have, maybe this is, I'm not going to be able to train with my favorite training partners, or solo training, solo drills. Right now I've taken a very slow approach to what I'm doing for my training, because I'm having to change some fundamental things in my life with my career, and reshaping that. So I know in my heart I have to spend more time moving around the big stuff, so that in a year or two, I will have a lot of, I'm redesigning my life right now to have a far lower friction against me training a lot more. And I say that because I'm moving out of, in my career field, I've been in accounting, finance, and banking. The demand for face time, for you to be in your seat, is great because of the responsibilities you have over money and financial controls. Whereas the work I'm moving into now, into data science and into data analytics, it's about your productivity and getting it done. They don't care what time of day, they get it done. So I'm I'm taking some hits right now in terms of career transitioning to fundamentally change my relationship with how I can train. So that was annoying.
I feel we've talked about this sort of 2020 and the upheaval of 2020. It's always interesting how people see me, because some people know me as a jiu-jitsu coach, or some people know me as a jiu-jitsu athlete. Some people know me as a writer. Some people know me because I worked for UFC. Some people know me for, the Mind Jitsu. And you have all of these different labels. And the one thing that I have done is I've spent 26, 27 years in the writing realm. And that doesn't even include writing poetry and writing songs when I was a kid. So I've been writing. But the one thing with writing, and one of the reasons I want to get away from writing, now you and I, we've talked about this, we won't talk about it in depth, but I want to write books, and I want to write a lot of books, and I'm going to write a lot of books. But other than that writing, right, I don't want to, I did newspaper writing, I did, blog writing, I did magazine writing, etc. And I'm a consultant for that. But I really only want to focus on the writing that's really meaningful to me. As much as I loved helping other people and being a consultant and some of the newspaper stuff I did, I really, at this point, there's only so many years in a lifetime, I want to write the things that are meaningful, the stories that are inside me, that are begging to be told, that deserve to be told. And part of the reason is writing, it's not just that I've done it so long. Writing is very laborious. It's very difficult. It can be torturous. It's done in solitude usually. It's lonely. And so to do it right, to do it excellently, to sit in your chair for, on a slow day, 8 hours, right? On many days, especially as you get close to a deadline, if you're doing a big project, you're talking 10-hour days, 12-hour days, right? You stay sitting in that chair, you're sedentary, your blood's not flowing. You're not engaged. You don't have the social contact that you have on, say, a jiu-jitsu mat or like what we're doing now. So you get starved of a lot of things that are meaningful, a lot of relationships, a lot of face time, a lot of quality time, a lot of flexibility. You become a slave to solitude, a slave to that writing. So I've determined, like, look, when you really enjoy the writing, every bit of writing you do, then it's not the same. But even then, I would say, for me, what I found is I like to write, even if it's meaningful writing to me, I like to write in bursts. I don't like when I was in newsrooms, it was just hammering it out. And it was long hours sitting in a chair and trying to rewrite the lead and writer's block. And it's very painful. So like you, I'm transitioning where I'd love to do more speeches, more video, more books. But the things the stories that I'm really dying to tell, and what I've changed from many years, this is where we tie into the perfectionism that you were talking about. Because I know that all too well, right? And a lot of perfectionism stops you before you even start. We talk about excuses people make. A lot of people are held hostage by their perfectionism, where they won't even follow through on things because the burden is so high, the bar is so high that they just feel like, oh my gosh, I can't possibly live up to that. So they don't even continue with it, or they don't do it, right? They abandon it, or they do that in dating too. Sometimes they do that in dating. They have a standard of a person that they want to be, that it's like, though, that person doesn't exist. And since the perfect person doesn't exist, they don't want to commit to anybody, right? Nobody's good enough. They're afraid to commit. So for writing, what I've learned, which made it a lot more enjoyable for me, since I was the perfectionist and I would rewrite the lead and rewrite the lead and rewrite the lead and keep changing things, and nothing was ever good enough, and I was insatiable. And what I learned is I write a lot more these days, whether it's a song, whether it's a poem, whether it's something for social media, whether it's something for a book chapter. I write a lot more stream of consciousness, where I just say, you know what, this is what's come out of you. Maybe you edit it, make sure it's grammatically correct, add the commas, whatever, go through and edit it 2 or 3 times, but then leave it be. And then I'm content to realize that because there's an old saying, the sentence that can't be made better has never been written. So it's just like anything. Any sentence, if you and I wrote a book today, you could always make a book better. You could sit there week by week by week and go through it. You believe it or not, you can never stop and say, it's just like jiu-jitsu. There is no mastering writing. You can always, if you want to go through the pain, if you want to go through the torture, like Napoleon Hill did with Think and Grow Rich, the book, 20 years to do that. Matt, 20 years of grueling writing and grueling dedication, sacrifice. You can do that. John Wooden, 16, 17 years on the Pyramid of Success, he worked on that, right? You can do that. But what I found for me is I would rather get perfection via the volume, which is you just do it year by year. Eventually you find your voice and you just keep doing it better. But I don't want to torture myself and carry that backpack or that burden of perfectionism. It's already a heavy burden. And so stream of consciousness means, what is it that's in you? What did you want to say? And since I'm a writer and I've been doing it a long time, a lot of times my stream of consciousness is probably better than 95% of people's, writing. Just being boom, just being word perfect. That's where the word perfect in computer lingo, word perfect, the system, is a play on word perfect in the old days of journalism, where you didn't have spell check, you didn't have all these editing features. You had to write it right the first time. It had to be done by a certain time. It had to be on point, grammatically correct, and it had to be ready to roll and hit the printer. That was word perfect, meaning do it right. Basically, do it right the first time, like you and I are doing right now with this. It's like we don't have do-overs. We don't have a, hey, retape that. We don't have editors in the background that are going to fix stuff, whatever. We have to do it right the first time. So word perfect, word perfection. But that's the paradox where now stream of consciousness allows me to just be, to enjoy it, to let what's in me, to get out of the way of it, let it shine through. Then I can take and that's more of a subconscious mind thing. And then editing is more of a conscious mind thing, where your conscious mind will come to it and say, okay, do I want to say that? Is there a better way to say that? What's the grammar like that? But Noah, writing is a lot more enjoyable to me when I let my subconscious and my stream of consciousness, when I just let my natural self flow, and then I go and grammatically fix it, edit it, put it in a good order, and then let it go, and not be perfectionist Frank. I'm thinking, because the perfectionist side of me, man, it just sucks the joy out of a lot of things. As much as the end product may be good, it just totally sucks what the French call the joie de vivre. It totally sucks it out of it. And I want to enjoy it. As much as I want to produce something that's magnificent or excellent, I want to enjoy it. I want to have a good day. I want to be a pleasure to be around. I don't want to be the guy who's producing a masterpiece and perfection, but I have a short temper with other people around me because I'm so has to be this way. I don't want to be like that. So that balance point for me is to, yes, be disciplined in the writing, right? Set aside 4, 5, 6 hours a day for the writing, but get out of the way more and just be. Then you can go edit it, kind of like a coach would in jiu-jitsu. Hey, coach, I watch you roll. I watch Noah roll with 4 or 5 guys. I'm sitting there. Maybe I'm telling you little things during the roll. Noah, watch for this, watch for this. And then at the end of it, you'll come over and say, hey, coach, what did you see? And then we'll pick 2 or 3 things. That's the editing, right? That's the editing. That's the conscious mind. When you're out there on the mat, that's more of a subconscious mind thing. That's an autopilot thing. That's a flow thing. That's ideal. Your reflexes, ideally, you'd be relaxed. Now, this is the thing you were saying there too. The Greeks, in Greek philosophy, they used to talk about the forms, right? The forms that was more their word, like the ideal. And so in Greek philosophy, that was a big deal. But a lot of Greek philosophers thought, hey, there are these forms and you can be aware of them, but you'll never reach them. It's kind of like our common notion is, hey, you can pursue perfection. We could say Tom Brady's perfect, but to say that Tom Brady is perfect, even though he's got 6 rings, or Michael Jordan has 6 rings, to say that they're perfect presumes that they couldn't do it better, when of course every great legend could say, I could have done it better, right? Everybody could do it better. I mean, Tom Brady could have won. He was in 9 Super Bowls. He could have won all 9. I mean, he could have won every year. There are throws he wants back, right? He's lost 60 some or 70 or so games from college to the pros. So there is no, perfection is elusive, but it is a great dangling carrot. But it's sort of that paradox of, it's a great dangling carrot, but heavy lies the crown. You were talking about the Gracie family. Heavy lies the crown. If you're a Gracie, there is no escaping the fact, if you're a Gracie and you're young and you're grappling, and you're someone like Kron Gracie, who's just phenomenal, there is no escaping that you have the last name Gracie, and that every time you step on the mat, people hold you to a different standard. And you almost, whether you want to or not, you're almost defending the family's honor. Whether you want to or not, you could say, well, I don't want to do that. I mean, I love my family and I'm grateful and I want to be a champion, but I don't want that. It's too heavy. But sometimes heavy lies the crown. Sometimes we have to just assume it and say, I'm okay. I'll wear that crown. I'll take whatever comes with that. But it is still finding ways. Like, I would be interested if we ever get Kron Gracie, if we ever get him here on our podcast, or, depending on where we're going in the next few years. But it would be interesting to see how someone like that navigates all the expectations that can come with, say, your last name, or your LeBron James has a son, and that son, Michael Jordan's son has never been in the pros, right? He was a very above average college player, a good, solid, or good basketball player, but but that's a lot to wear, So we all have that, even those of us that maybe don't have the name. Sometimes it's just self-inflicted, where the standard is so great. And we all have to find that balance, which is, okay, yes, I want to be great. I want to hunt excellence. I want perfection. But at the same time, I want to go to lunch with Noah, and I want us to have a good day. And I want to, if I see a kid at the park and the kid smiles at me, I want to smile back and enjoy that moment. And I want to take time to smell the roses. And I want to be a gentleman with a woman you're in love with or that you're dating. And so always being perfect, or trying to be perfect, it's so heavy to always wear that. And sometimes I think that's where the Asian or Eastern philosophy of sort of just flow, which is
Frank. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, that's.
Well, Frank. No, I wanted to highlight something there that you're talking about. So whenever you're in that, whenever you're writing, what I learned when I was starting to write in grade school and high school is don't critique your first draft. Just get your first draft down and get your ideas out there so that you express them. And so that mindset of just letting flow happen, of just doing output. Now, for me, whenever I'm writing, and my writing's not civilized whatsoever. It's I don't have as much experience, so that particular aspect. But once that opens up and I start writing, I don't fall into the mindset of the puppy is dreaming, so he's barking in his dream. If you can hear him. I don't have that mindset, because when you get into proofing and editing, that's where you're criticizing. You're criticizing, and so that one is like an opening up activity, and then the criticizing, where you're proofing it and editing it, that kind of is a closing down in a lot of ways. It's closing down. So whenever I'm, in the kind of work I was doing in finance, whether it's an auditor or when I was in banking and doing financial due diligence, I was not in the place of creation and just rough first draft. I was in the art of criticizing, and that really and just being in that mindset professionally. What it does to you is it turns you into a professional complainer, and that impacts you at home and with your friends, and it's a necessary evil is what I'm gonna offer up. You need to be critical in your thought and analyze things and break them down, decompose them, deconstruct them. Dissect them out, draw the lines of connection, and be a bit reductionist. That's necessary. However, it's also tough on you, on your ego in a lot of ways, because what happens is you get into this criticizing and complaining mindset that makes you very negative and not a joy to be around. When I was training in jiu-jitsu and I was in white belt class, and I'd hear other white belts saying, I just can't do this, I'm not doing anything right. That is coming from a place of where they're working all the time. Let's say they're a programmer, and what they do is review others' code all day long. That is, it's very nice to sit and write code. When you're writing code and you're making something, you're creating, it's working, but then you need to also spend time reviewing code as well, and that closing down and that complaining, that criticism, that negative aspect. It improves your writing of code. It improves, like, when I would write my due diligence reports, which I did not like whatsoever, but once I get into writing, I really enjoyed the first draft. And what the inhibition to creation is the flow, is finding the joy. You get on the mats, I would find myself, I get all the friction that I would create for myself. Oh, I'm too heavy. My body is, my cardio is horrible, and it's too hot in the gi, and they're running around, and I'm going to avoid this class because of this instructor just doing way too much cardio warm up, and I hate the warm up, and I'm just going to be tired the rest of the training session, and that all that negativity, all those frictions. There's a lot of this kind of mindset. If you read Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art, and he talks about friction. Basically, it just comes down to just do it. And like when I'm in New York and things are going well, and I'm training 4 or 5 days a week, and my skin is, like there's stuff going on with my skin. I have mat burn all over my knees and my feet, and so the first few weeks of that, it's a little difficult, but I fall into a rhythm, and I reconnect with my joy of training jits. I reconnect with it because I'm like, yeah, warm up's going to suck, and it's hot down in the basement during the summer. It is really hot, but I start to get over that. I start to get over that by just staying with it, just going, I know there's joy on the other side of this. I know there is. Like my clothes start fitting really well, and suddenly they're looser. I don't have as much frustration with everything, and my jujitsu improves, and I enjoy it again. I even if I don't see the improvement of where I'm at, like, oh, I'm tapping out all the time. I don't care. I don't care because I get to that place where I've gotten past that barrier. Right now, I'm at a barrier of my training. I know that I should be getting on the floor and doing floor single exercises. I need to be doing that right now. I'm using an excuse of this career transition to not give myself that 30 minutes, even just 30 minutes on the mat. I should be doing that. I know right now. I'm being. Let's be genuine. Let's be authentic here. What are my frictions to training by myself? And I know I'm not the only blue belt at Henzo's who's just like, you know, I don't have to train. I don't need to put on the gi. I don't need to get on the floor because I don't have one to roll with. And what's it for? I can just wait until then, wait until later to do it. And that's because I am disconnected from my joy of training. I'm disconnected with that because of the camaraderie, stuff like that.
I interviewed Randy Couture last year.
Okay.
I need to put, I think I put 10 minutes of that interview. It's a 2.5-hour interview. It was a really good interview. We covered a lot of Randy. I'm guarantee you, if you're a Randy Couture fan, if you're an MMA fan, if you're a mindset fan, psychology, that thing covers a lot of ground, a lot of factoids, interesting factoids of Randy that people don't know about. I've interviewed Randy many times, but that was a really thorough, complete interview. One of the things that he said, I asked him as acting court, he did the Expendables with Sylvester Stallone and, Dolph Lundgren and Jet Li and Schwarzenegger. And he said that there were a couple times during filming where Sly Stallone, being the director or wearing a director hat, didn't like the way some of the acting was going. It was a very mechanical, very more robotic. And he's like, no, that's not the way you would say it. Just spit it out. Just say it. Just spit it out, man. Just say it like you would to a guy next to you at a bar. I mean, just don't get in the way of it. Stop overthinking it. Stop thinking about the camera. Stop being unnatural. When you get in the way of it, you're being unnatural. Just be natural. Like now, I'm talking to you and I'm not worried about, oh my God, what's the person out there watching? What are they thinking? Who doesn't like what we said? So that's one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sly Stallone saying, just spit it out is another way of saying, be natural, flow, just be. You can, say it the way you would. You're here. You've got talent. You've got charisma. You've got the look. Just say it the way you would in this real situation. Stop trying to act it. Stop trying to be so scripted with it. Get out of the way. The other thing you had said that made me think of something, you talk about the joys of thing and being in the complainer role where you were, in that role, financial due diligence and analyzing, is this right? Is this right? Is this wrong? something going on here that shouldn't be
Right.
going on. And of course, I worked in a newsroom for 11, 12 years of my career, and I covered City Hall, I covered police, and covered general assignment, covered Olympics, went to the White House. I did some cool stuff. So I really covered federal bribery cases, a wide gamut. I got a really great look at a lot of different industries. And when I was covering police, and I covered a lot of police stuff, I covered death penalty cases. I went into the prisons and interviewed prisoners. But with the police stuff, a lot of the homicide stuff, where the child, you'd see stuff with child rapes or rapes. You have to read those reports as a journalist. You go to the court, or you get somebody to send you those documents. You have to write about that. You have to read those documents. You now have that in your head. I went to cases where I remember early on when I first had lived in Utah and I was a journalist, they had a guy who was like a jumper. He was on top of a building and he was going to jump. So everybody gathered and people are sitting there at the bottom, like looking up at the guy, and the police are talking to him, trying to, negotiate with him, convince him not to jump. And I was thinking, I mean, I did not want the guy to jump for his own sake, but I also selfishly was thinking, please don't jump, because I don't want that in my head. Like, I don't want that to be part of my day, right? I don't, some things you can't unsee. And so much of journalism, I loved it, right? It was so, you came to work every day. You didn't know what the day would throw at you. You had an excuse to sit down with people, and you might know someone for 5 minutes, and you could ask them these very personal questions that you couldn't otherwise do. You'd be a rude son of a gun if you did that. But when you're wearing the journalist hat, you have a license. If people are okay to talk to you, you have a license to dig in deep and skip the small talk. And that's a wonderful quality if you're good and people trust you to do. You're like, wow, people trust you. People tell you a lot of things. They tell you things they wouldn't normally tell a stranger. That's a very powerful thing. And there's it's very dynamic. You get something tangible at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, you say, what did I do? You have a story that comes out in a physical, tangible newspaper. Editors can be happy. It's for a guy like me who was very shy, it was wonderful. I was winning a lot. There were awards. I was beating the competition on the vast majority of stories. So there was a lot I loved about it. But at the end, there was a lot of burnout too. I worked so hard at it. I loved it so much. I wind up clashing with some editors over the vision of stories, editorial vision. Now I look even at what's happened to journalism, and there's things I just think that, like, as a journalism norm, I'm like, I think the profession could do a lot better. There's a lot of things. So, but one of the big things for me is, like you said, my role at times was to be a bulldog a lot, in certain instances, and to referee things. And there was always a lot of drama. If it bleeds, it leads, right? There was a lot of drama and I'm just so happy. Someone asked to do that job, but I'm just so happy now, to be able to design my day and not pollute my mind. I had so many years of that, as much as I did get some value from it. And I, sometimes, whether you're a police officer or you're a journalist or whatever, you got to see things like that up front, or you're in a war zone. You just see things up front, and you have to learn to make peace with them, right? So you can grow even in that adversity, even in those dark moments, even in that environment, you can grow. But it took a long time for me to make sense of it, make peace with it. And now, do you think I want to go and read? Like, I mean, I'm not going to say, I once was with a woman who I loved, and she would love watching these horror movies and all these scary movies and all these dramas of, when the husband killed the wife and then got away with the insurance money and, all that stuff. She was always watching something like that. And I'm like, I just can't, like, me, even though that, I was like, I just, to download that in your brain and all that fear, and to be excited at being scared, like, no. But I did that as a journalist. And now I think, just to balance the scales, I like to be, I'm aware of that. And there's a time and a place, but I try to minimize my exposure, be conscientious. And even if I do, all the news in the world can't be happy. We can't live in a bubble. We can't sing Kumbaya all day long. We can't just huddle with high vibration people, because people have life events and we have to help them. People we love are going through things. So it can't always be hunky-dory. I'm not saying that, but it's just having a balance to where, I mean, even with mind jitsu, let's imagine I don't have right now, you know, and I know friends that are psychologists, they're priests, they're pastors, they're this, that, and they sit there with 6, 7, 8 clients a day, people going through divorce, people suicidal, people going through their worst time of their life. And you, even if you're on the other end of that, even if you're an expert, you know, mind jitsu, you're working with them. It can get heavy, man. I mean, if I just did 3 a day, it can get heavy. Sometimes you just have to like detox, like, wait, let's not do 6 or 7 in a day. Cause it can be, you know, you get some psychologists out there, you can absorb that. Now, some of them are masterful at it, but a lot of times, whether you're a social worker, you can, especially if you're an empath and you really feel people's pain and you take on their, I mean, you can absorb a lot of stuff. And so what you're saying is very true. I think a lot of people will resonate with them. They will relate to that. And so that's part of the reason we're Everyman BJJ. We talk about jiu-jitsu. That is one of the fruits and the benefits of the jiu-jitsu martial arts lifestyle. You get to turn that off. You get to invest in yourself. You get to be around cool people who want you to grow too. They want to push you, but they want you to grow. And you take those 2, 3, sometimes if you're training a lot, 4 or 5 hours a day, and you're devoting toward improvement. You're devoted, you know, you're almost a little bit of sort of a monk experience, because it's a combination of meditation and movement and other things, and mentoring and sharing and socialness and just being. There's a lot of things going on that mat. Some people, I remember some of my friends used to call it church. You know, they'd go train on Sundays too, and they'd call it church. And it was like that for them. That is some people
Makes
out
sense.
there. It's their church. It's as crazy and blasphemous as that may sound to some. It's like it can take broken people. It can make them whole. So for anybody out there, you say, well, why do jiu-jitsu, or why do whatever, Krav Maga or whatever it is, you know, Taekwondo, why put your kid in it? Yeah, you know, the confidence thing and teaching people self-defense and all, and that's great stuff. The thrill, like you talk about all the time, where the idea of getting your black belt and what that would mean to you, what that symbolically means, and what that means to just to your soul, you know. So there's a lot of value there. But one of the other values just is that there's a lot of bombardment of our brains. Our brains get a lot of overstimulation, overwhelming stuff. Sometimes, like you were saying with your work, things you don't even want in your brain, but they're part of your job. Police officer or firefighter or whoever, a medical professional, they go and see things, an ambulance professional, and you can't show up and say, I don't want this one. I'm not showing up on that one, right? You got that call, it's yours, right? And you're a journalist, and it's on your watch. I can't go and say, I guess I can, but I just don't have a job in the morning, right? And so you sign up for it, and there's a lot that gets thrown at you. You can be a captive audience to a lot of stuff. And I think that that's where having things in our life that allow us to turn off, allow us to just be, allow us to decompress, allow us to declutter, allow us to empty, allow us to relax, allow us to be still, allow there to be more quiet, more stillness, not da 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 da. You're not stuck in traffic. And that is, whether it's a yoga mat or it's a jiu-jitsu mat, that is part of that addiction. And you just have to get, like you were saying earlier, Noah, people just have to get past the fear, because it's so foreign as a white belt for a lot of people. Maybe they hear Joe Rogan talk about it, they hear others, they have a friend. But when they actually get out there, especially for women, they are not used to sweaty people trying to pull their arm.
I didn't think of that. That's actually, wow. Yeah, that's actually that's a good example of like, oh, that's
foreign.
ick, the ick factor.
And it's not like in one day you get over that foreignness. So it's not just the risk of injury, right? It's you know, it's very close, and it's like, what is this guy hugging on me for? Why is all his weight on me? Why is this person sweating on me? This person smells differently than I'm accustomed to.
Yeah.
I'd rather not be with this person. This person's too heavy. How much more time is in this round? I don't know if I should be doing this. I don't know if this is for me. And this is different than what I thought it was going to be. And so you imagine the inner monologue of someone who comes, and that's not always a 1-day fix or a 1-week fix, right? It's like, you need a person that's going to be brave, that's going to accept. You almost need a stubborn personality. You need you need somebody who's either too dumb to know how much is involved, like, oh, they're just too blind, just too nonchalant to know what's really going on, or someone that's just a really stubborn personality like I was, who just realizes that, oh my goodness, this is difficult, and actually likes difficult. Some people they like challenge, they run to challenges, they like challenges, like, oh, this is hard, not everybody can do this, sign me up, right? There's that kind of personality. Some people want that. That's the value of a black belt. That's the value of a Navy SEAL. Navy SEALs, I'm sure, I've met a number of them. I'm trying to interview Marcus Luttrell again from Lone Survivor. Hopefully I'll get him.
Cool.
But Navy SEALs like the fact that not everybody can be a Navy SEAL. In fact, very few, a 1% of a 1% of a 1% can be a Navy SEAL. That means something. The fact that a lot of people get run off means something. A black belt, even though there's whatever there are, 30, 40,000, however many there are, I wish somebody would give us an actual count, it means something. And so we always need in jiu-jitsu, as much as we want to be inclusive, as much as we want a lot of people, we know the benefits of it, as much as probably almost everybody could benefit from it, anybody who's healthy, at least. The reality is, if anybody can get a black belt, it would lose its value. We need it to mean something. We need there to be a standard. We need there to be a weed out. As much as, we may want everybody to do jiu-jitsu, whatever, or every police officer, whatever. If there is no weed out, what's that going to do to the value of a jiu-jitsu black belt one day, or whatever, or wrestling? I mean, you could say, well, there'll always be a hierarchy. Yeah, but I still want a black belt to mean something. I should be able to see a black belt. A black belt might not tell me, God, this guy is God's gift, or to fighting, or that he's the baddest person in the room, or she's the best. It might not be the case, right? You got people but it should tell me a lot of things about the intangibles, about the desire, about the sacrifice. It should speak to that. If it doesn't, the day comes when they're handing them out and there's not that intestinal fortitude and that exceptional drive and the sacrifice and, all the beautiful intangibles. If that day comes, that'll be a sad day for jiu-jitsu, because we do need to have a weed out. There does need, even for the black belts who aren't very good fighters, but they came every day. They're doing the best they can. They're giving everything. They've been doing it year to year to year. They're a black belt in spirit. They're a black belt in work ethic. They're a black belt in so many ways. Maybe they're not going to go to tournaments and clean house. I'm okay with that. We talked about that on our recent episode, you, me, and Jordan. I'm okay with there are different standards, and some people, an autistic kid or somebody who's 50 or 60 or 70 who's trained jiu-jitsu, I'm okay with there being a different standard. But I don't think we should be negotiating the intangibles, the invisible things that need to be there, the personal qualities. We can negotiate and make different allowances, for physical attributes. Some people hit the jackpot. Some people are physically challenged. Some people are older. Some people work a lot. Well, we shouldn't be, really lowering the bar on the other things, on the intangibles. People have to be hard workers. They have to have a certain attitude. They have to have a certain resilience, and honor, and they have to be able to use that power for good. I don't think we should be teaching people, if we just know your students. If you think your student's kind of person that's going to use it recklessly or for bad, stop teaching them. Tell them to go somewhere else.
I have a question for you about that.
Yeah.
So, there's two things I want to talk about there. But imagine, has there been a black belt awarded for someone who's been incarcerated while they're incarcerated? Do you know of any of that? Do you know of that? That is
have you seen a story of that? So I don't know of any, but you're making me think of someone who might have. If there is a black belt, I'm trying to think of which instructors would award that.
So that's fraught with some issues, but let me take a step back from that, and that's just a quick one-off question I have for you to think about.
And by the way, I'm a fan. I am a fan. I think we should do. I think that prison should be to reform people. I am a fan of introducing better ways and better concepts to truly rehabilitate, more resources. I've covered the prisons. I've been in the prisons. I've interviewed them. I am a big fan of doing more to prepare people for reentry to society, because the vast majority of them are going to get out again. They're going to be our neighbors. People do go through things. We all have our challenges. I understand there's some really ugly crimes, but there's a lot of criminals who, if we did invest in them, if we did give them a chance, I believe in transformation. I believe in change. So I'm all for, and there have been many people over the years that I've trained with who did do prison time. And I've seen a lot of police officers train them. So again, that's an aside, but you were going to say, Noah, the point you wanted to make with, you're saying basically somebody being remote. Imagine if you were my student remotely, and maybe I saw you once every year, a couple of years, and I belted you. That, I guess that I've heard of that going on. I haven't seen it with my own two eyes, but I've heard of that.
But it's a more of a thought exercise, and I'm going to table that right now, because there's a lot of richness around that thought, around that idea, I think, to flesh out. But whenever you're talking about the elitism and, the hierarchy and the weed out factors, I'm going to go back to the frictions and the resistance. One of the reasons why, I think this is kind of in our DNA although fighting is in our DNA, as you like to say.
You know who coined that phrase? Mr. Dana White, my boy, my old friend. Dana White's got to step up and give me some credit. What's up, D. White? If you ever watch this, come on.
But come also, on.
They got people have my domain. They got T-shirts. I just wasn't smart enough to trademark that one, but it's done wonders for our sport.
But there's also another, on the other side of that coin, is the mediocrity, where this going back to the mean, going back to the average, being in the middle, where people want to, they want to avoid pain, they want to avoid resistance, they want to avoid hardship.
Yeah, people want to hack their way to a black belt. BJJ black belt hacks, right? I mean, there are some people out there who get them pretty quick.
Yeah, there's videos.
People that got them short. But everybody wants it. And there are some exceptions to the rule. There are people that are, Calteras of the world that are, what's his name, Kit Dale. There are some exceptions, Lloyd Irvin, Fredson Pichau. But by and large, they're a 1% of a 1% of whatever. But go ahead anyway. So yeah, you're there. But I'm saying a lot of people do want there to be kind of the hack, and the reality is the vast majority of people, I just don't want to put the work in, right? I mean, a lot of people don't want to put the work in, and
because of the resistance.
Yeah, and part of what you get, part of what your soul gets, right? The stain of confidence that's hard to wash away. You get that through the grinder. You get that through the grit. You get that in the trenches. And the reality is, a lot of people would love to go into a room and say, "I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt," and put it on Facebook, and people would love. Almost every person we know, if they are sane, would love to have a picture of themselves with a black belt, right? If they knew about jiu-jitsu, a lot of people don't know what jiu-jitsu is still, so they would say any black belt. But if most people would be like, I could be a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, people would, everybody would be like, hey kids, how many of you would love to be you walk in any classroom, 50 kids, whatever, or an auditorium of kids, who would love to be a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt? I mean, almost every hand, maybe every hand's going up, bro. Everybody wants that, but not everybody wants the.
Well, isn't it?
Everybody wants big sweaty gorillas sweating all over them.
Isn't your first
stinky gorillas sweating all over them?
Isn't your first time to get on the mat as a white belt doing jiu-jitsu? Isn't that pretty much the same as the day that you get on the mat and you are formally awarded your black belt? Isn't that the friction still the same, except what has changed? The resistance, all those factors of perfection that is part of the perfectionist trap and the resistance. Those never change. Those are still there. The only thing that changed is the person who got on the mat as a white belt and the person who got on that mat who became the black belt. It's the same day.
You know what they should do with people's permission? They don't do this right now. When you first come in day one, right? First of all, they should get you to sit down with everybody and talk about your goals. They shouldn't just put you in class and say, come back tomorrow. Thanks. Did you like it? There should be like 5 or 10 minutes with the instructor where the instructor really tries to meet you, know your goals, you know, and find out where you are with that, right? And tell you, hey, you can email me anytime
I got
you have
that
questions.
actually.
So first of all, yeah. Secondly, you if people would agree to it, take a picture with that white belt day one. Day one, take a picture with them and ask if you can video, if you can do like, if you can video.
I wish.
You're going to bottle that video up. Now, and so when you're a black belt, when you get there, then they have but when you show for your black belt, they have a picture of you day one. They have maybe a statement that you wrote day one about your goals. You sit down with the instructor. The instructor would say, I want you to write a mission statement for yourself. So that instructor, when he gives your black belt, would have your mission statement. This is what you said to me day one. This is the picture we took. And here's video of you as a white belt. It's really the before and after, just like in, nutrition's gotten so much mileage out of that, right? Like this is so-and-so at 300 pounds. This is them at 180, right? And that would be so powerful rather than just, okay, yeah, you trained 9 to 13 years. You could have been a doctor quicker, whatever. But that if we almost did that as habit. Now, the problem with that, the one problem would be, hey, Frank, I would have hundreds of mission statements or maybe thousands over a 10-year period of people who stopped coming, right? But that would be valuable in a way too. But then you'd also have the mission statements and the video and the picture of the white belts that stayed, and that would be so powerful. This reminds me that this is a weird thing that I do. So let's say I've been married once and I've been divorced. My ex-wife and I get along fine. We have a son in common, and I've dated since then. Every once in a while when you date, along comes a woman that you're just like, wow. And when you have a wow moment with a woman when you first meet her, it's scary because you're thinking, okay, if I'm too into her, then I'm going to blow it. And I might be, you don't want to show too much interest, but if you're too cool for school and you don't show any interest, then she thinks you're not interested. So, you can overdo it there. But every once in a while, a woman comes along and you're like, wow, I could see myself with her. I don't know if she could see herself with me, but I could see myself with her. And every once in a while, Noah, I've saved, I don't go to many movies, but I've saved like the movie stub for the first movie we went to, the restaurant, as a memento, thinking just in case, if this worked, right? We went to a concert. I'm like, then I would have that 20 years hence, 20 years down the road. Now, the couple of times, I've done that, 5 or 6 times. The times I've done that, it didn't go anywhere. So I just have that somewhere in storage, right? I just have these like tickets of, but I can look at it, it's a memory. But my point is, it's just like in jiu-jitsu. There's no guarantee that white belt comes in, you take their mission statement, you sit down with them, you find out their goals, you let them know you're human, you let them know you're there for them, they can email you, whatever. You see them as a human, and you also take the picture, you have the video, and that the meaning of that, the value of that when they're black belt would be exponential. Now, one other thing, and Robert Drysdale, I don't know, I think Robert probably watches us every now and again. I hope he does. Robert Drysdale, who gave my black belt. This is the crime of crimes. As much as I love Robert, and Robert's got a movie coming out, and he's got a book coming out, and he's a great guy. He's a high performer, very talented guy. Noah, do you realize there is no picture of my black belt moment, and there's no video? Nowhere. Never had one, never seen one. I have no picture evidence. I have my certificate. I have my belt. I have Robert Drysdale proving it. Everybody knows I'm a black belt. They forgot that in a class full of 40, 50 people, they forgot to take a picture. They forgot to shoot a video. That would be gold to me to get some pictures from that day, to get a video of that day. It doesn't exist. In all of that moment, they forgot. Man. They forgot to take a Robert. How? And they did it on a Monday. Remember, I told you, to my knowledge, at least back then, a lot of the black belt ceremonies that I would bet, and I don't know, but if they did a statistical analysis, I will bet you the vast majority of black belts are on a when there are a lot of people in the class, right? And it's a big event. It's a ceremony.
Well, Henzo's has this a big, Henzo's has big. These are like huge events. Yes.
Right.
Sorry.
Robert Drysdale decides, I love him. God bless him. Now there was a pro and a con to this. The pro was giving me my black belt on a Monday. The pro was, you got me, Rob. You surprised me. I didn't see it coming. And I cried like a baby, and I couldn't say anything. And I cried for 20 minutes. And because just like a surprise, if you get a woman, if you propose in the right way, it will be one of the most memorable moments of her life if you can do it in the right way, right? Just big events or a surprise birthday party, right? When you're really surprised. So he got me, man. Like that added to the drama of the day. It's like, I knew I was close. I didn't expect that day, and I didn't expect it even that week. I didn't know it could have been a month, could have been 2 months, could have been 3 months. I'm of the code. You don't ask the guy about the black belt. You just don't ask him. He's going to do
agree
it.
with that.
He knows what he's doing. I didn't ask him. But the con was, it's a Monday, so people are just like, people are slower on Mondays. They're not, and they worked all day, whatever. So so my point is, though, that black belt moment is so incredible. Whatever we can do to add, it's already incredible. But if you had a picture of you day one as a white belt, video of you day one as a white belt, a mission.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Got a little frozen there. Looks like we lost our man. Let me see if I can reconnect him real quick. Wow, this is technology. Happens. All right, well, I'm going to close this podcast. I know we've gone, looks like about 75 minutes. Lost Frank. But hey, this is a good chat today. I appreciate everyone joining us. And we'll be shooting more of these in the coming days.